Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 20th of January of 2026. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And this video, once again, we're going to start with another massive missile and drone attack that took place during the previous 24 hours. Once again, I would like to remind you that between the 19th and the 20th of January of 2026, the Russians once again used hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles to attack the territory of Ukraine. Here we can see the approximate routes of attack. We can see yellow lines, we can see orange lines, we can see red line and pink lines. So every single line means some type of weapon that the Russians used. For example, yellow lines means the drones that were used by Russia. Red lines means missiles. Orange lines, for example, means Iskander missiles. And before we continue, I would like to point your attention to these two orange lines. As you can see, the Russians launched something from the area of Crimea in the direction of the city of Vinnytsia, and this is the biggest lines on the map. So if we calculate the distance between the city of Vinnytsia and the settlement of Kerch in the area of Crimea, we're going to see that the Russian missiles crossed more than 700 kilometers. So this is the city of Kerch, and the distance is more than 740 kilometers. So according to pro-Ukrainian sources and according to pro-Russian sources, for the first time since the beginning of the special military operation, the Russians used Iskander 1000. So this is a new version of Iskander missiles that can cross around 1000 kilometers. But during this attack, as you can see, the range was just 740 kilometers plus minus. But this is a very important achievement of the Russian side, because now from this very moment the Russians can use Iskanders and to attack and to cover basically the entire territory of Ukraine, and they don't need to use for these purposes aircrafts, they don't need to use for this purpose strategical aviation, just Iskander 1000. Pro-Russian sources also published their own map of routes of attacks, and their map is almost similar to the map that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources. Later, the Minister of Defense of Ukraine reported that during this attack, the Russians used just 372 air vehicles. So once again, this is not the biggest attack, and this is something in the middle, and Ukrainians are saying that they managed to bring down 342 targets. Zelensky himself stated that Ukraine during the previous 24 hours wasted around 80 million euro for air defense purposes. So he said that this is the entire cost of missiles that Ukraine used during the air defense of Ukraine. Another important thing that I would like to point to attention, if you remember, during the previous 3 or 4 days we received lots of videos of how Ukrainians were using their anti-drones. So this is the video that was published on the 16th of January of 2026, and here we can see how Ukrainians were destroying Russian Grand drone with anti-drone. But as of the end of the 20th of January of 2026, we haven't received even a single statement or picture or video that can confirm that Ukrainians were using these drones today. So everybody was expected that Ukrainians are going to use this type of weapon, but it seems that they didn't use it. Either this system is not ready yet, or this system failed during the previous night's massive missile and drone attack. And of course, the consequences. According to information we have, the consequences are very strong. As a result of today's combined Russian missile and drone attack on Ukraine, around 46% of Kiev is without heating. Parts of Western Kiev are also without water supply. However, this is expected to be restored today. So this is the statement of Ukraine's authorities. Another important thing, that the power stations number 5 and 6 were damaged by Russian missiles. Zelensky also made a statement. He stated that today's speech by Zelensky in Davos, which was scheduled for 2 p.m. and 30 minutes, has been cancelled for now. He stated that this cancellation is connected with the massive attack, and that he decided to stay in Ukraine, in Kiev, to coordinate the process of restoring of the capital of Ukraine. But the sources are saying that he cancelled his travel to Davos because, according to information we have, the President of the United States of America cancelled meeting with him. So which means that this is probably the main reason why he decided not to go. Another important thing is that Russians attacked the city of Kiev, and during the previous day we received a lot of videos of how the Russians were attacking. For example, in this video, we can see how Ukrainians were trying to bring down Russian drones and missiles that were trying to hit power station number 4 and power station number 5 on the eastern bank of the river of Dnipro. So as you can see here, we can see how Ukrainians were launching missiles, most likely Patriot systems, through the city of Kiev. And here we can see how Russians were trying to break through the Ukraine air defense and how the Russians were trying to destroy objects on the surface around the city of Kiev. So very important video that shows, first of all, possible positions of air defense forces of the armed forces of Ukraine. After this attack on Kiev, almost 6,000 apartment buildings are left without heating. Nearly 80% of them are buildings where heating had been restored since January 9th. Another video is coming from the city of Odessa. Here we can see the same situation. The Russians were attacking the city of Odessa. That this attack took place during the previous nights, and once again, as a result of this attack, some object of energy infrastructure was completely destroyed. Anyway, despite all these videos, despite all these statements made by Ukraine's authorities and so on, it seems that this wasn't the biggest attack carried out by Russians. So it seems that the Russians still have lots of missiles and drones, but for some reason the Russians are waiting for something. So once again, they used just 372 drones, and this is not the biggest number. The Russians used more missiles and drones during the summer period of time. So it seems that the main strike of winter of 2026 is still ahead of us. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of very important videos, and first of them is coming from the most northeastern part of Ukraine. Here we can see some electronic warfare equipment of the armed forces of Ukraine that was installed in the northeastern part of Ukraine, and when the Russians discovered this equipment, the Russians destroyed this equipment, and Ukrainians suffered losses. Another important video is coming from the area of the city of Dnipro. Here we can see how Russians, as a result of reconnaissance operation, managed to discover a position of a Patriot system, and as a result of Iskander strike, this Patriot system was destroyed. So we see that the Russians started more often and often publish videos of this type, of how they were attacking Ukraine positions, air defense forces and systems without almost any resistance from the Ukrainian side. And this is the third video published during the previous 24 hours by pro-Russian sources about massive attacks and long-range attacks, first of all. And here we can see how Russians, as a result of reconnaissance operation, managed to discover the position of a HIMARS system of the armed forces of Ukraine, and then the Russians managed to get the HIMARS system and attack the system with a drone. So just during the previous 3 days, the Russians, according to different, let's say, videos, managed to discover and to destroy up to 2 HIMARS systems, 2 Patriot systems, more than 10 radars of air defense forces, and probably 5 or 6 substations that support the energy infrastructure of Ukraine. So all these attacks were carried out by Russians during the previous days, and all these videos were published during the previous 3 or 4 days, which means that the Russians are changing their tactics, and the Russians are trying to do everything they can with the purpose to force Ukraine to accept the Russian terms and demands. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of updates. And first, let's talk about the Sumy direction. The Russians continue attacking reinforcements and reserves that continue arriving in the area of the city of Sumy, more precisely to the north of the settlement. So, as we discussed, the Ukrainians believe that most likely the Russians are planning to intensify their offensive operation in this area. So that is why they are sending more and more troops in this direction with the purpose to stabilize the second line of defense. The Russians control the situation and try to use as many as possible drones to slow down Ukrainians. Another important update is coming from the southeastern part of the Sumy direction. During the previous 12 hours, the Russians managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Ryasne. The Russians answered the tree line around the river of Karova. So this is the territory, and most likely from these positions the Russians are planning to advance further in the western direction with the purpose to attack the settlement of Ryasne from the east. As for the Kharkiv direction, during the previous 24 hours we received lots of updates from this area. First of all, the Russians continue improving their positions around the city of Volchansk. Another important thing is that the Russians managed to improve their positions in the most northeastern part of the Kharkiv region, and these are the changes on the ground between the dates as we discussed. Currently, the Russians are tasked to establish complete control over the territory to the north of the river of Volcha. I would like to remind you that just several days ago, the Russians destroyed the only bridge that connected the northeastern part of Kharkiv region with the mainland. Now Ukrainians can't send additional reinforcements and reserves in this direction, so that is why the Russians decided to take this territory under complete control. We believe that in coming days, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation will provide us additional details about the situation in this region. Furthermore, the Russians continue bombing and attacking positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in this part. So here we can see how Ukrainians brought additional multiple launch rocket system, most likely with the purpose to attack Russian forces that are currently trying to advance in the northeastern part of the region. And when the Russians discovered this multiple launch rocket system, the Russians attacked this territory with a significant number of drones with the purpose to destroy this system. So this is a very important video. Another another update is coming from the area of the river Oskol. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions here as well and to capture the forest by the name of Ambarne. So all these updates are telling us just about one thing, that currently the Russians are trying to connect these three footholds and to create just a single foothold, and then to use the positions around the city of Volchansk, the northeastern part of Kharkiv region, and the area around the city or around the border of between Russia and Ukraine and the river Oskol to attack further in the western, southern and southeastern directions with the purpose to establish complete control over the most northeastern part of Kharkiv region, and then to attack further in the southern direction and to outflank the contingent of the armed forces of Ukraine around the cities of Kupiansk and Kupiansk-Kozlovoy. As for this territory, we still don't know, and probably nobody knows for sure what is the exact status and the situation in this area. The Russians continue publishing videos of how they are attacking and destroying positions of the armed forces of Ukraine around the river of Oskol, but as you can see, another day without any changes on the ground. Now let's discuss the situation in the Slaviansk direction. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians attacked and destroyed another river crossing along the river of Seversky Donets. In this video published by Russian sources, we can see how Russians were bombing the city of Liman and how Russians were attacking the let's say logistic along the river of Seversky Donets. As a result of this attack, this pontoon bridge was damaged, but as of now it's very difficult to understand whether the Russians managed to destroy it. So since the beginning of January of 2026, it seemed that this is already the fourth bridge or fifth bridge that was destroyed by Russians in this area. But at the same time, we see that these attacks didn't change the situation with the city of Liman itself. We see that there is no progress on the ground. Most likely the Ukrainians still have possibilities to hold their positions. As for the Konstantinovka direction, during the previous 24 hours, according to information we have, the Russians attacked significantly the most northern part of the settlement. We have lots of updates exactly from this area. For example, here we can see that the Russians, as a result of attack, managed to destroy completely the bridge along 0523 road that connected the city of Konstantinovka with the mainland. Furthermore, we received lots of videos with FPV drones from the same direction, so the Russians created another kill zone in the most northern part of the city of Konstantinovka. Now the Russians are trying to do everything they can with the purpose not to allow the Ukrainians to bring additional reinforcements and reserves on the territory of the city. As for the changes on the ground during the previous 24 hours, we have just a small adjustment around the settlement of Pritiechina based on the video published by pro-Ukrainian sources. So there are still very heavy clashes, but it's another day without changes on the ground. As for the Dobropolye direction, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians improved their positions significantly around the settlement of Grishina. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates, and these changes were made based on the video published by pro-Ukrainian sources. Furthermore, when talking about pro-Ukrainian sources, we see that they have also expanded a gray zone in this area. Currently, up to 30% of the settlement of Grishina is considered as a territory covered with the gray zone, which means that the Russians continue advancing in this area area and that there are very heavy clashes for the settlement of Grishna. If Ukrainians lose control over the city of Grishna, this will lead probably to complete collapse of the southern defense of the city of Dobropolye. From the settlement of Grishna, Russians most likely will continue advancing further in the northwestern direction, trying to outflank the main supply lines that go in the direction of the city of Dobropolye from the southwestern direction. So it seems that the Russians are about to finish this task. As for the Zaporozhye, the direction, during the previous 24 hours, we haven't received almost anything. We have just several videos of how Russians were attacking positions of the armored forces of Ukraine in this area, but as you can see, without changes on the ground, it seems that the Russians are regrouping before moving further in the western direction. As for the western Zaporozhye direction, here we can see the same story, just with one difference. The Ukrainians are trying to redeploy additional forces as close as possible to the line of combat contact and to slow down the Russian progress on the ground. Furthermore, several pro-Russian sources stated that during the previous 24 hours, the Ukrainians managed to counterattack in the area of the villages of Pavlovka, Novoboykovska, Novoyakovlevka and Lukyanovska, and that the Russians were forced to fall back from these territories. As of now, we haven't received anything that can confirm this, so that's why we will keep the map as is, but pro-Ukrainian, pro-Russian sources are saying that there are very heavy clashes exactly for this area. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.